Hi there, Serial Trader here. Just going to do a quick walkthrough of the SPX chart here, 30-minute time frame. And in yesterday's video, I discussed that looking for another leg down today to possibly set up for at least a short-term buying opportunity. And we certainly got that leg down, although it was much more vicious than I anticipated. I was expecting maybe a marginal new low below this low here, which was at 29.14. I was thinking maybe we hit 2900 or thereabouts and then bounce. Well, we actually opened at 28.98. We opened below 2900 and just tanked all day, never looked back. Went as low as 28.22 and started a little bit of a bounce towards the end of the day. So I'll tentatively label this, 5 down for either a 1 or an A wave, and obviously we're expecting a fairly significant counter trend bounce up in either a 2 or a B, and that could be starting essentially any time. Although looking at the overnight futures, which I'll get to in a moment, might be a little bit more downside left, but that won't necessarily translate into tomorrow's session just because it happened on the futures. Now, assuming that we did bottom here, just for this initial wave down at the low of today's session, a 50% retracement would get us to 29.25. 618 would get us to almost 29.50, and even just a 382 would still get us up to 2900. So that's still significantly higher than current levels. So certainly still worth taking a shot at playing the bounce. And I'll point out as well, we're extremely oversold on multiple time frames. So we're already oversold on the daily time frame, which is pretty impressive how quickly that happened. So we're at 28 on the daily RSI, and you can see that's already below where we got to at the June lows. And this, overall, I think this will be a more bearish move than this nice three-wave zigzag. That was a very orderly decline we had, from May into the early June. That was a very comfortable, corrective pullback. This looks a little more menacing to the downside, but I'll reserve judgment for now. If we take out the June 3rd lows, that'll certainly add some more, bearish bias to the way I'm looking at this. But so daily RSI are at 28, 4-hour RSI. We were lower intraday, but we closed this bar right at 20, so just about 21. And if you look at the 4-hour RSI, even going back here to the December low, which obviously was a significant bearish move at the time, where did we get to on the 4-hour RSI there? We got to 23, and we're actually lower than that here. We're at 20. And even over here in October, this initial wave down we had, where did that get us to? 19. So right around the most significant 4-hour RSI lows that we've seen in quite some time. So there's that. So nice and oversold on those two bigger time frames. And if you look at the hourly RSI, we're absolutely crushed on that too. We started coming off that oversold condition just slightly. What was the lowest bar we had here on hourly? Looks like 17. Yeah, 17 and change was the lowest we got on the hourly RSI. And again, comparing that with some previous significant bearish moves, I think it's the lowest we've seen in quite some time. So you can have a little bit of assurance that, okay, we're due for a short-term bounce. And certainly the Elliott wave pattern suggests that we have a fairly mature-looking impulse wave to the downside that needs correcting pretty soon here. Okay, so that's the outlook there as far as that goes. Now, I just want to also show, or no, we can still use this chart to do it. So we're actually also looking at the retracement. So if we are going to have a more bullish resolution here, which I think based on the viciousness of today's action, that's less likely at this point, but let's just entertain that thought still. So here's some retracement levels of this overall move up from the June lows to our recent all-time highs. And we already smashed through the 618 retracement and basically closed right around the 618 retracement. And intraday we got, in between the 618 and the 786. And if this is just the initial 5 down, which may or may not even be done yet, and we have a correction up and down again, it's hard to imagine that next leg down doesn't take out these lows, and then that'll kind of give the chart a more bearish tilt if and when that happens. But, maybe we'll have a very weak, third leg down, or C wave down, if that's what we're going to do. We'll hold the lows and we're off to the races again. Again, I doubt it, but you got to stay open-minded here, right? Play the action as it presents itself. But right now it's presenting pretty aggressively to the downside overall. Okay, so there's that. And okay, we'll go to the thinkorswim candlestick chart. So this is this might be one of the largest point movement days I've ever seen on SPX. At one point we were down well over 100 points intraday, but then we recovered to close down only 87 points. That's still very significant. Now what I also like is that we have a gap here, and gaps love to be filled on these indices in particular. And if you look, there's also a gap over here too that's basically unfilled. So there's this nice zone right here. We'll call it a gap fill area from earlier, and then just today as well. So that's a nice area to come up to at least, and let's see how that actually lines up with our fib retracement from the high to the low here. So yeah, that gap fill would be somewhere in between the 38.2 and 50% retracement, if that is our pivot there, which I'm not necessarily convinced of that just yet, but it could be. All right, so gap fill potential, very oversold multiple time frames. We're also in the oversold condition on the daily oscillator here as well. So definitely short-term bounce should be coming real soon. Ideally sometime tomorrow, but I wouldn't want to see it get past Wednesday without starting a pretty significant reversal. Otherwise, I'd be losing confidence that we're going to have much of a bounce. But if precedent is anything to go off of, which I think it certainly is, there should be one coming soon. Now I've entered a position with this idea in mind. So I've got 60 SPY August 9th 285 straight calls. Kind of built an average position throughout the day and got my average price to around $4, $3.99. So let's just and obviously I don't even want to hold this till Friday. I want to get out tomorrow or Wednesday would probably be what I'm looking at here. And I might if tomorrow just looks absolutely ugly and shows no signs of coming back, I'll probably just take my loss on those and avoid a larger loss. But ideally that won't happen. Now going to SPY, so this is a SPY chart, which obviously is going to look pretty much exactly the same as SPX. So if we have the low end here on SPY, that's a big if. Looking at some retracement levels. So just the 382 will get us to 289.55. So let's see, 289.55. If I could get that tomorrow, that'd be great. But that'd be around 13K profit, so I'd take that. And certainly, if we get the 50%, that'd be around 292. 50% retrace, so that'd be getting close to 23,000. So I'll be happy enough with that. And ideally tomorrow, because these weekly options can really make a lot of money very quickly, or they can go against you pretty quickly too. And if it's not working fairly soon after you get in, it's best just to get out with the weeklies. If you're in something for 30 plus days, you got a little wiggle room as far as waiting it out, but it's kind of my thoughts on that. Now, I'm not really going to go through all the charts here, just so I do a quick update on SPX and SPY and what I'm doing. So I think I've done that. Now, back to this chart just briefly. So the real, the big trade I suspect we'll be setting up for, and maybe it wasn't the best decision to try and play this bounce, although I still like the potential here. I mean, it's very likely going to bounce hard pretty soon. And if and when we get that bounce, and it looks good, we go up in a nice three-wave correction, get into some sort of Fibonacci retracement zones, start failing, start rolling over. I think that'll be a nice bearish entry for either selling some futures or just outright buying some puts. But I'll certainly update if and when we get to that point. So let's see what happens tomorrow. And, you know, I won't do a thorough video where I go through everything like I normally do until maybe the end of the week there. But I'll certainly update this as far as SPX and SPY and how my positions go throughout the week. Oh, and just one more quick thing. I almost forgot the ES futures. So on overnight session here, we went as low as 27.75.75. So we went below the 786 retracement of that entire move up from the June lows. But it looks like we're rejecting that pretty strongly here. And in fact, it looks like we're actually starting a good bounce here on the futures. And ideally this you know, carries over into tomorrow's regular session, and we actually you know, get a good retracement up, and we can get out of those weekly calls and then start eyeing up you know, a bearish entry. Although I suspect it'll take maybe a few days to actually form a proper upward correction, but we might get that initial A wave up, you know, as early as tomorrow. That's what I'm looking for. But yeah, definitely just wanted to mention futures did go quite a bit lower, but now rejecting those lower prices, and it appears to be bouncing hard so far. All right, Serial Trader signing off.